Check
The
the
morning
manifold
the
pressure on
world
engine 3.
seemed to hold its breath
Reading
began
low,
as a
adjusting the
thin
throttle
line
now.
of pale gold
Keep her steady.
along the shattered coast of Calais.
Fertig.
A color too soft
Pumpe
for the
aus.
violence that
Tankdeckel
still
gesichert.
clung to the air like smoke. Lieutenant Marcus Ellery of the
Tank ist voll.
358th
Ventil
Fighter
schließen.
Group stepped alone onto the frost-stiff tarmac, listening to the distant
Schlauch abziehen.
rumble of artillery
Hier,
that
das
never
Ventil ist
truly
locker.
stopped
Jawohl.
in northern France. He wasn't
diesen
a
Schlüssel.
superstitious man, but something about the silence between
need
the
more
shell
leverage on this
bursts
bolt.
unsettled him. An unnatural
the manual says
pause,
to check the fuel
as
line
if the sky
first.
knew what was coming and refused
Just
to
try to
warn him.
rest. You're doing fine.
His P-47
We need to monitor
Thunderbolt,
this closely.
harbor ghost,
Hand me that suture
waited
kit.
beneath the dim lights of the dispersal bay.
It's all right, you're
its
safe with us
silver
now.
skin marred by oil
Vitals look
stains
stable,
and
but
old
we're
bullet
running
scars.
low on supplies over here.
Marcus laid a gloved
on it.
hand against the cowling,
Schneller,
feeling the
kurz rein.
cold bite through the leather,
Ist
and
drin, Herr
whispered,
Unteroffizier. Feuer!
"We've got one more in us, girl. Just one more."
Los,
He always
schneller.
said things like
In
that to the
Stellung.
plane,
Fertig
partly
geladen.
as ritual, partly because there were moments when he genuinely believed the machine answered in its own way. Captain Roland Marks, his flight leader and closest friend, strode toward him with that easy grin he wore like armor. "Briefing in 5, Roland said, though his eyes flicked toward Marcus with quiet concern. Everyone noticed Marcus hadn't been sleeping. His hands shook when he thought no one was looking, and in the rare quiet hours he sat with a distant, hollow stare. The squadron chalked it up to the usual fatigue, but Roland knew the truth. Marcus was still carrying the weight of his brother's death over Cherbourg the month before, a loss that hadn't left him space to grieve, only to fly and fight and pretend the sky would someday give something back. The briefing tent smelled of damp wool and cigarette smoke. Major Samuels stood over the map, tapping a marked enemy position near the Calais rail yards. "Intelligence confirms a German armored column is preparing to retreat east," he said. "Your job is to stop that retreat, hit the convoys, keep them from reinforcing the Siegfried line." Marcus listened without really hearing, his thoughts drifting in and out like signals fading through static. Roland elbowed him gently. "Stay with me," he murmured, almost too quietly to catch.
Here they come.
Marcus
The
nodded,
jug
though the
showing the
heaviness
enemy
in his
exactly what
chest
air superiority
refused
looks
to
like.
lift.
A devastating
By the
strike
time
on
the
the rail
Thunderbolts
yard.
roared down the runway, the sun was a molten disk rising behind layers of thin cloud, turning the sky bruised purple and hazy. Marcus felt the familiar surge as Harbor Ghost lifted off the ground, her engine's deep growl steady and comforting. In the air, he felt the illusion of freedom, a place where gravity lost its meaning and the haunting memories quieted to a dull murmur. Roland's voice crackled over the radio. "Raccoon 1 to Raccoon 2, you're flying tight today. Good to see." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Roger that. I'm here." He wasn't sure it was true, but saying it out loud made it feel real enough. The squadron flew low across fields scarred by endless shell craters and burned farmhouses, the scars of occupation stretching for miles. Smoke drifted from ruined towns like faint, dying prayers. As they neared Calais,
Check your
the
static
horizon
lines.
flashed
Gear
with
check,
artillery
Private.
bursts.
Let's move,
German
let's move.
flak guns barked from hidden nests, peppering the sky with black blossoms of shrapnel. Marcus gritted his teeth, banking
Stand up and
left
hook
as a
up.
burst tore
Equipment
past his
check.
canopy.
Go.
Roland's voice echoed sharply. "Keep
This
weaving!
low-pressure
They're
system
awake
is
down there!"
accelerating.
The
We
Thunderbolts
anticipate
dove
heavy
into their
chop and
attack
icing
run,
above 10,000
their wings
feet.
shuddering as
What
they
is the
unleashed
projected ceiling
streams
over
of
the
heavy
channel?
50
The
caliber
front is
fire
advancing
into the
approach.
clustered
The front is
vehicles below.
accelerating southeast, gentlemen.
Trucks
Expect
erupted
heavy
in
icing above
flames,
10,000
and the
feet near the
snarling
convergence zone.
P-47
What about the
engines
turbulence
drowned out the
effect?
screams
Echo
of
7
tearing
reporting.
metal.
Coordinates updated.
Marcus forced his
920,
focus
Charlie
tight,
Lima Victor.
pushing everything else out. He lined up a rust-red half-track, pressed the trigger, and felt Harbor Ghost vibrate as fire tore from her guns. The half-track exploded, debris scattering across the muddy road. For a brief, flickering moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't in weeks, a thin spark of clarity, almost
coming
relief.
slow, watch the
But
center
then the
line.
radio crackled again,
now,
this
steady.
time with panic. "Raccoon 3 hit! Bailing out!" Marcus jerked his gaze to the right just in time to see a Thunderbolt spiraling earthward, trailing a black plume of smoke. A parachute blossomed below, a fragile white bloom in a world determined to crush everything delicate. "Damn it," Roland muttered, banking toward the descending chute. "We'll mark the landing zone. Marcus, stay tight." But Marcus didn't stay tight. Something in him snapped loose. Maybe guilt, maybe instinct, maybe the need to save at least one man when he couldn't save his brother. He dove lower, scanning the forested patch where the chute drifted. Raccoon 2, get back in formation, Roland barked. We don't have the fuel to play Guardian Angel today. But Marcus was already too far down, too deep into the compulsion that erased fear. He leveled out at treetop height, heart pounding as Harbor Ghost skimmed the ground. The parachute snagged on a cluster of bare branches, leaving the pilot swaying helplessly. German soldiers were already emerging from the tree line, rifles raised. Marcus felt a violent surge of heat in his chest. Not again, he thought. Not like Oliver. He squeezed the trigger and swept the ground with gunfire, scattering the German troops. The trees splintered, dirt kicked up in thick sprays, and a few silhouettes fell. Roland's voice thundered over the radio. Marcus, break off! Break off! But Marcus didn't answer. He circled for another pass. On his second run, a hidden flat gun fired. The shell struck Harbor Ghost's left wing root, rocking the plane so hard Marcus slammed into his harness. Warning lights flared across the panel. Ghost, talk to me, he whispered through clenched teeth, as if the machine could hold itself together out of loyalty alone. Smoke drifted from the wounded wing, but the engine still roared with stubborn strength. Marcus pulled up sharply, panting, and forced himself back to altitude. I'm hit, he said finally, voice thin and strained. Roland swore loudly. If you die down there, Marcus, I swear I'll drag your ghost to the debriefing tent myself. The squadron rallied around him, forming a protective arc as they turned back toward friendly territory. Marcus fought the controls. Harbor Ghost shuddered, losing oil pressure, her left aileron sluggish. Stay awake, Roland urged, voice suddenly softer. Stay with me, Marcus. We're almost home. Marcus blinked hard, trying to stay focused as pain spiked across his ribs where the impact had bruised him deep. The sky blurred at the edges, the clouds smearing like wet paint. They crossed the channel with the squadron practically guarding him with their wings, flying so close Marcus could see Roland's determined expression through the canopy. You owe me a drink for this, Roland called. Marcus managed a faint breath that almost passed as a laugh. You're paying. But fate wasn't done with them. As they neared the English coast, another German fighter group, stragglers from a scrambled defensive unit, pounced from behind the cloud layer. Messerschmitt streaked downward, guns blazing. Roland cursed sharply. Ambush! Get him home! Marcus, climb if you can! Marcus yanked the throttle, but Harbor Ghost groaned in protest. The engine trembled, refusing to gain proper altitude.
Vitals look stable,
Tracer rounds sliced past his canopy. One Messerschmitt locked onto him, closing distance with predatory intent. Roland dove between them, guns roaring, forcing the German pilot to veer off. You're not touching him, Roland shouted, a fierce roar in his throat. Marcus watched through blurred vision as Roland chased the Messerschmitt, the two planes weaving like enraged hornets. More Thunderbolts joined the fight, and the sky erupted in a brutal swirl of gunfire and vapor trails. Marcus could barely follow the dogfight. He focused only on staying conscious. Harbor Ghost sputtered, coughed, then caught again. Come on, just a little more, Marcus whispered. The coastline loomed ahead, a hazy promise of survival. Behind him, the sky cracked with gunfire and smoke. Through the chaos, he caught a brief glimpse of Roland's Thunderbolt firing point-blank into the Messerschmitt's tail before peeling away in a hard climb. The German fighter burst into flame, spiraling into the sea. Still with me? Roland called, breathless. Marcus swallowed, voice faint. Barely. They limped the final miles toward the airfield. By the time Marcus lowered his landing gear, one wheel refused to lock. The ground crew scrambled below as he approached, smoke trailing from the wing. It's okay. Just put me down. Easy. Harbor Ghost hit the runway hard, skidding violently. The damaged wheel buckled, sending the plane screeching sideways in a shower of sparks. The canopy cracked. Metal shrieked like something dying. When the plane finally shuddered to a halt, Marcus slumped forward, dazed, barely aware of the medics sprinting toward him. Hands pulled him from the cockpit, voices calling his name through the ringing haze. Roland landed moments later and ran toward him, breath steaming in the cold air. You stupid, stubborn fool, he muttered, gripping Marcus's shoulder with trembling relief. "You don't get to go out like that. Not before I beat you at cards." Marcus managed a weak smile. "You never win anyway." Later that night, after the chaos settled and the field fell into the quiet hum of generators and distant thunder from across the channel, Marcus sat outside the infirmary wrapped in a blanket he didn't remember being handed. Roland joined him, sitting silently for a long while. The moon climbed above the hangars, pale and distant. "You saved him," Roland said finally. "The pilot you went after. He's alive because of you." Marcus stared at the ground, eyes burning with exhaustion and something else. Something he hadn't felt in a long
Check
time.
your static line. Gear
I
check,
couldn't
Private.
save Oliver.
Let's move.
But maybe I can still save someone.